The moment Marcus Ellison stepped onto the gleaming jetway, the subtle hum of arrogance from the airline staff hit him like a slap. He had seen this before. Smug glances, whispered comments that assumed he wouldn't hear them, the kind of microaggressions that dripped like poison into the air. "Is that the billionaire?" muttered a flight attendant to her colleague, her tone layered with disbelief, as if money had any bearing on decency or character. Marcus, a 72-year-old black man who had built a fortune of over $4 billion from nothing, felt the old familiar sting of being underestimated, his accomplishments reduced to gossip and astonishment. The young man at the check-in counter barely looked at his passport before smirking. "I hope you've got the right ticket, sir. We don't usually get people like you in first class." Every word cut deep, not because Marcus doubted his power or wealth, but because it revealed the audacity of prejudice dressed in professional veneer. He remained silent, his face a mask of calm that betrayed none of the simmering fury boiling beneath. His eyes, dark and piercing, scanned the crowded terminal, noting the disapproving stares, the small acts of condescension that made him feel like an outsider in a world that existed to serve him. This was not a man unfamiliar with wealth or influence. He had negotiated mergers worth billions, lobbied governments, and commanded boards of directors with a mere raise of his eyebrow. Yet here, in the sterile fluorescent glow of an airline check-in, he was treated as an inconvenience, a curiosity, a spectacle. He had learned long ago that power without patience was wasted energy, so he smiled faintly, handing over his documents with the precision of a surgeon. The attendant, noticing his unshakable composure, tried to mask her irritation with a veneer of forced politeness, fumbling with the scanner as Marcus's patience thinned. Behind him, other passengers whispered, casting sideways glances that spoke volumes. The humiliation of wealth in the hands of someone society refused to fully respect, simply because of the color of his skin, was a bitter taste Marcus had grown accustomed to swallowing. Yet today, he thought, swallowing was not enough. Something had to change. He had spent a lifetime building empires, innovating industries, and breaking barriers. Now, he would dismantle one of the world's most pretentious airlines, piece by piece, if it meant reclaiming the dignity that had been so casually denied to him. The situation escalated rapidly once Marcus approached the gate, where the airline's senior staff had gathered, exchanging uncertain glances as if to ask each other how to confront this unforeseen problem. A black billionaire who refused to be minimized. "Sir, I'm afraid we can't let you board this flight," said the gate manager, her voice trembling slightly under the weight of authority she clearly did not feel. Marcus stopped, tilting his head slightly, his expression unreadable. The insult was palpable, a direct affront to his decades of achievement and influence. "Excuse me," he said slowly, his voice calm but carrying the steel of someone who had faced countless challenges and never been deterred. The manager shuffled papers, avoided eye contact, and muttered something about policy and unforeseen circumstances. Marcus's patience, long and deliberate as the years of hard-won wisdom it had been built upon, snapped like a wire under tension. He demanded an explanation, his words precise, unrelenting, a combination of authority and fury that filled the terminal. The murmuring crowd sensed the tension and instinctively shifted to observe the spectacle, smartphones emerging to capture what they assumed would be a scandal. Yet Marcus did not perform for them. He was meticulous, deliberate, and lethal in the way only someone who had mastered the art of leverage could be. He cited the law, referenced corporate agreements, and pointed out the hypocrisy of a policy that could be twisted to insult a single passenger while ignoring countless others who had received preferential treatment. The gate manager, flustered and overmatched, could only stammer, her every attempt at control dismantled by Marcus's eloquence and authority. He wasn't just arguing a case. He was exposing a systemic arrogance that treated power and accomplishment with irreverence if the individual did not conform to their narrow expectations. In those moments, Marcus realized that the fight was no longer about a single flight. It was about an entire institution built on entitlement and subtle discrimination. And he would not let them win. The air of the terminal shifted as he made it clear that he had the resources to force a reckoning that would extend far beyond the walls of the gate. It was not mere bravado. It was a calculated threat, the kind only a billionaire with nothing to lose in principle but everything to reclaim in dignity could wield. The staff finally backed down, their uncertainty a testament to the power of someone who refused to be diminished. Marcus's eyes scanned the terminal one last time, noting every whisper, every shocked expression. Change was coming, whether they were ready for it or not. By the next morning, news of Marcus Ellison being denied boarding had spread like wildfire across social media and international news outlets. Headlines were splashed across every major network, each iteration emphasizing the absurdity and the insult. A billionaire, blocked from a commercial flight, with no reason other than the airline's arbitrary decision-making. But Marcus, ever strategic, had anticipated the backlash and was already executing a masterstroke that would redefine the airline industry itself. Within hours, he had mobilized a consortium of investors, tech innovators, and airline executives, unveiling plans to acquire a controlling stake in the airline responsible for his humiliation. The irony was exquisite. The very company that had treated him as a problem was about to be rewritten under his vision. Analysts scrambled to predict the outcome, debating the financial feasibility, the regulatory hurdles, and the potential market disruption. Marcus, however, moved with the ease of someone who had spent decades turning vision into reality. Within the week, press releases announced sweeping changes. New leadership, revamped policies, and a commitment to inclusivity and excellence that would eliminate the casual arrogance that had sparked the initial confrontation. The airline's stock surged in anticipation, reflecting investor confidence not merely in Marcus's capital but in his reputation for transformative leadership. Internally, employees were reassigned, and executives who had shown poor judgment were replaced, their dismissive behavior now a liability that threatened corporate stability. Marcus's approach was surgical, leaving no room for ego-driven mistakes or half measures. Every policy was scrutinized, every staff interaction recalibrated, and every customer experience redesigned to reflect the principles he had long championed in his own companies: respect, efficiency, and empowerment. By the time the company announced his formal role as chairman, the narrative had shifted entirely. Marcus Ellison was not the victim of petty insult. He was the architect of change, the man who transformed a humiliation into a historic acquisition that reshaped an entire industry. The story was no longer about exclusion. It was about vision, authority, and the subtle but undeniable power of someone who refused to be underestimated because of age, race, or preconceived notions. Months later, the airline that had once denied him entry became a case study in strategic redemption and corporate transformation. Marcus had implemented systems that ensured accountability at every level, technologies that enhanced customer service, and policies that celebrated diversity rather than punishing difference. The employees, once fearful of the billionaire who had publicly humiliated their gate staff, now worked under a leader whose presence inspired innovation, respect, and ambition. He had not merely purchased a company. He had rewritten its DNA, embedding lessons from decades of experience that spanned multiple industries and continents. The industry watched in awe as profits soared, customer satisfaction skyrocketed, and the airline became a symbol of progressive leadership. Marcus, meanwhile, remained unpretentious about the success, emphasizing to the media that dignity, fairness, and strategic vision were non-negotiable principles in any enterprise. Those who had doubted him, who had sneered at his presence on that ill-fated flight, were now forced to acknowledge not just his wealth but his enduring capacity to reshape systems, challenge prejudice, and turn insult into transformative power. In private moments, Marcus reflected on the irony. The humiliation that had sparked anger and disbelief had become the catalyst for innovation, influence, and justice. The story of that day in the terminal quickly grew beyond a mere anecdote and became the stuff of legend, recounted in boardrooms, classrooms, and leadership seminars alike. It was no longer simply about a billionaire denied entry to a flight. It evolved into a timeless lesson on the transformative power of audacity, intellect, and relentless perseverance. People told the tale to illustrate how a single individual, armed with vision, courage, and a refusal to accept indignity, could confront entrenched arrogance and systematically dismantle it, rewriting the narrative of even the most rigid and formidable institutions. By reclaiming his dignity with unwavering composure and strategic brilliance, Marcus Ellison had achieved far more than simply boarding a plane that had once tried to deny him. He had redefined what it truly meant to wield power with precision, purpose, and principle. His actions became a benchmark for leaders and innovators everywhere, a shining example of how respect, foresight, and determination could reshape industries, inspire change, and leave an indelible mark not only on the airline that had underestimated him but also on the broader landscape of business and human decency. The tale underscored that true influence is not measured solely by wealth or status, but by the ability to turn insult into opportunity, adversity into transformation, and challenge into a lasting legacy that reverberates far beyond the confines of a single moment or a single terminal.